Alright, mortar mixed, high strength structure repair mortar. High strength, fast setting, durable, low shrink. I don't know. I think it'll work. Well, we're gonna give it a try. I'm gonna do some lost PLA casting with some mortar mix. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome inside the Mind of Matt. And if you've been following along, I've been doing lost PLA casting with the investment process, which means I take some type of plaster and I make some kind of mold out of it. Well, I don't know if you've shopped for Plaster of Paris, but I've been getting it in a 25-pound bag, and it's about $20 for that bag. And I'm getting, one or two castings out of each bag, which isn't the greatest to yield, but it's starting to add up now that I'm continuing to cast on a regular basis. That being said, a couple of suggestions and a little bit of the research that I've done. People have made some mold material out of mortar mix. Now, the cost of this 55-pound bag of mortar mix was $16. So I'm getting a little bit more than twice the amount for less of what it costs for that half the amount of the plaster. Now, I have been mixing it with a 50% or ish, a mixture between sand and the Plaster of Paris. With this, I'm just going to run just the mortar mix and mix it up with some water. I've got a few models that I'm going to cast up all at one time, and I'm going to dry them out, fire them, melt some metal, and I'm going to pour them. For this pour, I'm going to melt some aluminum. Let's take a look at what I'm casting, and then I'll explain why, and then we're just going to get to work. Now, in order to not necessarily repeat, but more of the fact that I'm looking to improve, a couple changes have been made. I tried the benchy. This time I'm going to make sure that it definitely cools enough before I try to shuck it from its shell. But I did see and think about a couple of things that might help my pour a little bit better, because I saw some other imperfections that I think that by doing what I've done, it might help, it might not. But one of the things, I've reduced the size of my sprue in order to slow the metal down a little bit, in order for it to feel a little bit more effective. There's also a high spot on here, here, and these guys here that are higher than where I'm actually going to be coming out of the metal. So I figured if I gave it a little bit of a path of some air, it might fill those areas a little bit better. And I also reduced the size of my pour basin. Second repeat, let's go to the repeats. I'm going to do another rose. I attempted 2 on the first attempt. One of them was successful, but I ended up having to give it to my lover for Valentine's Day. That was the purpose of it. So I don't have to commandeer her rose for my upcoming trip, which that's one of the reasons I'll get to here in a minute. I'm going to attempt another rose. Now, on the previous attempt, my sprue was not tapered, it was straight. This one is tapered. Another thing I've done is a little bit of math. The 3 arms that you see here, the combined area of those 3 is the same area as here, so I'm splitting that up. The only thing that's not part of the math is this center thing here, which we'll see what happens. And the other thing is, in the prior attempt at this, I ended up just kind of like I did with the benchy here. I just kind of cut up and struggled a little bit, but I went back into Fusion 360 and I designed this sprue system and was able to fasten that up nice, and once again I reduced the size of the pour basin on this guy as well. Now, I have attempted to do my maker coins in the past, but not with this new gravity bifilm method that I've been attempting recently. Now, some of these sprue base or these gates are very small, but if you're a fan of Perry over at SW Dweeb's channel, I'll leave a link in the description. He recently did a video just experimenting with small gates, and the success that he had was very good. Now, I was going to do this one in a separate video, but seeing how I'm trying to do a bunch of casting for this trip that I've got coming up, which once again I'll mention that here in a minute, but this is my bell. I previously did a video and designed this as a gremlin bell. I've scaled it up 200%, and I'm going to attempt to cast it. So those are the 4 things that I am going to attempt, and it's going to be all with the mortar mix experiment. So win, lose, or draw, we'll see what happens. Now, one of the other things that I've done and discovered in some research about one of my processes, which if you've been watching my Lost PLA with my Plaster of Paris molds that I've been making, they've been cracking on the surface. And I did discover that Plaster of Paris does have a maximum temperature in which you're supposed to put it in, and then it'll start to disintegrate. So that being said, my burnout process is going to be a little bit different. Instead of going up to a high temperature, I'm going to do a long drying process, and then I'm going to ramp it up to a certain temperature, and I'm just going to kind of keep it there for longer than I have been. So my whole process is going to take a little bit longer, but this video is going to be like the last casting video that I'm going to be making until I return from my trip. And my trip is I will be traveling in like less than 2 weeks out to Goshen, Indiana for MRF 2019. If you don't know what MRF is, it is the Midwest Rep Rap Festival. It is my 2nd time going. Last year I went, I had a blast. There's a whole playlist. I'll leave a card right up there and check it out. Got to meet a bunch of cool people, and it's going to be a good time, and I'm looking forward to it. But one of the things that happened when I was there, and as I was introducing myself to people, and I'm telling them that I have a 3D printing and metal casting channel, and they're like, "Oh, do you have any of your castings?" And I'm like, No, I don't. So this year I'm making sure that I'm going to have a bunch of my castings to be able to take. Plus I have a banner that I had made up with my new logo, and I have some merchandise that I'm taking and everything. So that's my plan. In a couple weeks I'm going to be traveling out with a partner. If you watched my video with the bear with the laser, Bear's going to be traveling out. He'll be, hopefully he'll get to enjoy the event, as well as he's going to act as my cameraman. So anyways, I'm going to shut my mouth, I'm going to mix up some mortar, and we're going to get these made up so they can start to dry, and I can melt up some metal in a couple days. So here we go. Okay, I got my mortar mix here, got some water. I'm gonna mix this up a little bit thin, and hopefully when I pour it, it's just gonna fill all of my little crevices. Now, if you notice, I mounted the benchy sidewards here. The last time I kind of pre-dipped it and tried to get in all the nooks and crannies. And I don't know if I got all of them before, but I'm figuring by mounting it in this orientation, the flow of it's just gonna fill in everything nice and good. Give it a good, nice little shake, and we'll be good. I'm gonna have to mix up a bunch of this, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started here. Put that closer to the bottom. Okay, so I didn't have quite enough to do all of the molds. If I had done the benchy a little bit different, it might not needed as much, but regardless, this rose needs to get a little bit more plaster added to it. So I'm punting and drilling while I'm trying to talk, but I'm gonna mix up some of this plaster and put it in there quick. Almost forgot my handles. All right, well, everything didn't go exactly as planned. Turns out a 55-gallon bag is not as much as I thought it was compared to what I was trying to do, that is. If I was trying to do smaller quantities, it probably would have worked a little bit better. Now, its setup time is a whole lot longer than the Plaster of Paris, giving me a little bit more working time. The only thing I'm gonna have to find out is whether or not it got in all those little nooks and crannies. But I'm gonna give these guys a couple of days to dry, and then we're gonna put them in the kiln, fire them up. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna melt these down. Alright, so it got cold overnight and I brought these guys in, shucked them from their shell. It's been about a day and a half. These guys are pretty much dried up. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm gonna go outside, set the kiln up and start the long drying and burning out process. Now the Vinci one kind of got a little misshapen. I'll have to prop it up in order to get it to pour, but otherwise this mortar mix looks pretty clean, shiny on the top. We'll see what happens. Here we go. Alright, I'm going to start this process out nice and low and slow just to dry it. See you in a couple hours. Alright, so the dog woke me up about 5:30 this morning. I let her out and I got dressed and I got the kiln out and I put the molds in, and they've been cooking since 6 o'clock this morning. It is now 1:24 in the afternoon. I have ramped it up through a series of my knobs from a medium to a medium, low, and blah blah blah. I've covered this in some of my prior videos. I won't spend too much time on this. It's more about whether or not this material, the mortar mix, that being, is going to actually work. So right now the temperature according to the gauge is sitting at 600 degrees. So I've been kind of watching it, smelling it. I don't see any smoke, nor do I smell the smell of melting PLA. So I think I'm pretty much burnt out at this point. So I'm going to take these out of the kiln. Well, I'm going to turn it off first, let it start to cool a little bit. I'm going to take them out here in a minute. We'll take a look at them. In the meantime, I'm going to start to melt up my aluminum and then we're going to pour. So keep watching. Now I still see remnants of plastic, so I'm going to put these guys back in, crank it back up, go to high and high for a little bit. I'll have to slow the process of melting down here. Seems how it won't take long with my new torch. Get those guys cranked back up the temperature real quick. Okay, these things have been cooking for a while longer, and we do have one unfortunate event. If you watched earlier in the video where I ran out of plaster with the rows, you'll see here that I did have a failure. It split pretty much right in between them two. That being said, we still have 3 other molds to get out of here. One of them, the handle has already failed. Taking a chance on this one. All right. All right, I do believe this is the bell. Get this positioned for pouring properly. Pour just like that. All right, next is coming the benchy. Next, I believe is going to be the mega coins. This one dropped, but it does look like everything worked out okay. Now, so far looking at, there's not a lot of surface cracking. Oh, all right, I'm gonna break out the rows, but once again, this part was a failure. Set this aside, and as you see, it looked like it would have been a failure. Anyways, well, we did have a clean burnout. I was about to touch that with my finger, forgetting what is going on. Well, either way, we're not going to get to pour a rose, but these guys look pretty clean as far as the mortar mix. Do have some cracking, but doesn't look like a whole lot. Now, as far as my benchy vents go, I'm just going to get something to poke at this real quick. This one hole does not look like it came out very good, but we'll see. We're going to pour them. I'm just going to reposition a little bit, and then we're going to melt some metal. Pour, and then pour. Okay. Kiln's off. Let's get the fires running. Come on. All right, we're gonna pour. very few impurities. Like that. Alright. This is the bell, I believe. Metal. That's it. It's left. Alright, I will set my timer and we will let them cool for enough time this time before I go breaking them out. Alright, these have been cooling for a little while and I'm going to immerse them. I'm going to probably have to hammer them as well, but this is the bell. Oh, this is the maker coins. I saw maker coins. I saw them. Little blowout on, looks like some of the lower portion of it might have not gotten filled completely. Not all the letters came out completely, and I don't think I had, I don't know, I'm not sure. A little closer than, a whole lot less cleanup necessary, that's for sure. Clean up some of the letters. But I'll clean them up and we'll get a closer look after. I did the next one. So that was the maker coin. This is definitely going to be the bell. And through the little vent hole, I was able to see metal. At this point, the handle was the only thing holding that part on. I see bottom of a bell. Looks like we filled at the bottom. The top part of it did not come out. All right, I'll have to dig that out. We've got one more to douse. This is Mr. Benchy. Hopefully it'll fit in the bucket. And of course the inside did not take either, as far as it had a little hanger in there, but it's still almost completely. I think I could have made a little bit bigger of a vent, and you know, possibly something in my design. Of course, I still honestly believe that part of my problem is that the plaster just doesn't like to work itself into the little crevices. That being said, I have a plan, and I will discuss it in my closing comments. I'm gonna get this Benchy out of there once it's done simmering. It's got a little ring to it. Definitely gonna say, compared to the plaster, it's a little bit more difficult to crack open. Okay, definitely gonna say that the mortar mix is definitely not as of a cleanup as the Plaster of Paris. I did have a crack. These models are gonna take a little bit to get all the mortar mix out of them so that I can get a better look as to what I need to do to polish them up if I'm going to. I'm definitely gonna polish up the bell just because. But I'm gonna do that, and then we're gonna wrap this video up. So let me go to work for a little bit and we'll conclude this. See you in a minute. Okay, so I spent a little bit of time on the polisher, and you see it got a little bit of a shine going on, Mr. Benchy. Did have a little imperfection on the roof, and other than that, I'm gonna say that this was a pretty successful cast right here. Everything is intact except for that one little roof line. Got the stack, got 2 portholes. Now the bottom's a little rough, but other than that, now it did have a little bit of a crack, as you saw earlier, and that is definitely caused by the mortar. I'm not going to argue the fact. And next we've got my bell. Once again, not perfect. The top hook did not completely cast, and either did the underside where the clacker should have hung, but most of the letters, a couple of the little crosses on the top of the T's didn't come completely, but all in all, I'm going to say it's a bell. Now, as far as the maker coins go, I did not have success with these things again. They're just kicking my butt. I believe that my next investment, which I'm going to talk about here real quick in concluding this. So I'm going to say, as far as using mortar mix as a mold making material for casting metal, I'm going to say it's not worth it. It's the effort just to chisel it out alone was not worth the effort. Not to mention the fact that I did have some cracks that caused a little bit of imperfections. Also, mixing Plaster of Paris with it, you know, at a separating line just didn't work, so the rose was a complete failure from the get-go. It was an inexpensive experimentation, but wasn't a complete failure. Now, what I did mention earlier, that I was heading to Murph, which is in Indiana, and I have to go through a state called Ohio. And in Ohio is a certain reseller of a specific product that I have been researching. The other closest place is New York City, but it's in the opposite direction that I'm heading. And the road to Murph and Indiana goes right through this town. So I'm gonna hopefully make some arrangements, and on the way there I'll be picking up something for some casting when I get back. But there will be a bunch of videos that I will hopefully be able to get out from Murph, and between now and then there may be a video, can't guarantee it. But make sure that you subscribe, your notifications are set, and that way you'll know when my next video does come out. There's all kinds of links down in the description that you can use to do some shopping, save some money, some discount codes, and as well as some links that you can directly help support the channel. But anyways, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope that you keep on coming back, because there's going to be more. Happy printing, be safe pouring, peace!